just this lineup at this event, but we're seeing it a lot on stream because of all of the players. And we are going to get to see it played once again now as we get into game number 1. Let's see what has been queued.
And we're going to be starting things off with one of the matchups that I think is more hotly contested. And I was having a very interesting discussion about this exact matchup back at the hotel room last night, or in the lobby, with Chinois, who I was talking about this matchup where yesterday I was touting the point of Even Shaman is you bring it because it functions similarly to Even Paladin, but it beats Even Paladin.
Yeah.
However, he was having absolutely none of it. Chinois was saying that's a complete fallacy, that Even Paladin should just run away with this matchup.
Yeah, and basically we're hearing that echoed from pro to pro all over the place. We are hearing that just all of the pros are starting to believe that this, like you say, the fallacy is a really good word. It's the correct word for it. It is actually just favoured for the Paladin. People are starting to believe.
But then again, there are certain cards that will definitely help swing this back in the favour of the Shaman. Merc Spark Eel, maybe not the point of playing the deck, because you obviously have a lot of synergy with a one cost totem into Flame Tongue or Earthen Might, but my goodness, is it a good way to start things off. And given the construction of the Even Paladin deck at the moment, where most of the 2-drops have 3 health rather than 2, you know, I can see the reasoning for just using it on a 1/1 there, making sure he gets ahead on board, because when you have 2 Flame Tongue totems in your starting hand, you have to be ahead on the board right the way through.
Yeah, I mean, if you lose being on board at any point, you're in trouble. But even if you sort of stay level, you don't end up in a good position because Consecration sorts you out at some point.
Right. So for the moment here for Mitsu, you know, he clearly does not want to just develop this Swampoos into a board that it's just going to die to. It's going to be a very easy trade for Bequiet, because he's basically just got a 2/1 in that Merc Spark Eel, although it's buffed up by the Flame Tongue. He wants to try, I would imagine, and just get a very juicy juggler off of the Call to Arms and get sniping things off here. But he realizes if that doesn't work out and he starts to fall too far behind, that's the point where he is in an irreparable position. He will not come back.
Alongside that Consecration, of course, that Call to Arms, also another catch-up. So one of them destroys your opponent's board, one of them builds your own board, and that is why this Paladin deck does seem to have the upper hand, although it's by no means crazy. And we did see Tars bring the Hemet version, which did help significantly against the Paladin, because you just don't whiff anymore after about turn 6.
Interesting. So you just always find Hagatha.
I mean, you have still like 12 or 13 cards left in your deck afterwards. It just eliminates, you don't keep drawing whatever garbage 2-drops you don't want after turn 6, your small things anymore.
It's a very interesting idea indeed. As for Mitsu here, you know, not really the start he was looking for, because as you alluded to, Consecration, which while at the moment would not look too powerful, one of the other things that the players were touting when I was talking to them about it, in terms of the power of Even Paladin, is Thalnos Consecration. And I was kind of thinking when Thalnos first made its way into the deck that it was a third bad loot order. Like you really wanted the draw just so you put it in there. But now that I see it a little bit more, saving it exactly for that Consecration, it's kind of just insane.
Yeah, it's so good, not only in this matchup, but against the Mirror in particular. It responds to Tarim. Vertigo is one of the first players to really start talking about that, but sort of only in chat where nobody was listening to him. But I've got to credit him, because I think he was the first player I saw actually mention it, even though he wasn't necessarily the first big name to start talking that way.
And so now for Bequiet, it's just carrying on with the exact same game plan of value trade after value trade after value trade, which is what Flame Tongue allows you to do. It gives you that extra plus attack, so you can play these low attack, high health minions, which totems, and all these kind of rush minions that he's playing in his deck all have that exact attribute, which means he's getting huge amounts of value trades, but at the moment, not all too much face damage, which means Mitsuhide has, at the moment, got a pretty respectable amount of time to just find answers, all the time in the world, really, until this really starts ramping up with the likes of a second Flame Tongue totem or an Alec here, something like that. It's really not that much pressure.
And that is the big problem for the Shaman. I think that's one of we've highlighted the early game, but the Shaman does tend to win that. The problem is it then sits there with this junk.
Okay.
And it is junk. I don't care if that's rude to the Shaman. You know, and the second you get rid of all those buffs, all those totems and direwolves, the Shaman just hasn't got any available. So it can't even play Raid Leader. It just has nothing in the odd section that helps it finish games quickly. It can grind them, but Paladin's got so many resources.
It's actually insane, isn't it? Like, if you put Tarim in this deck, it would become tier 1 overnight, I think.
Sure, like, or Bloodlust, or any card that works.
Exactly, like, it just all these totems, all these token-generating cards as well, like Primal Fin Totem and all that nonsense. However, there is still a good amount of ability for Bequiet to ramp up this pressure now. The Glass Knight is kind of awkward for him because innately with Flame Tongue, you are always going to be overkilling it. But with the Sea Giant, it's good enough, especially with the second copy of Flame Tongue, to start applying more pressure. This now is a board that Mitsuhide has to find an answer for very quickly indeed.
A lot of answers there. Avenging Wrath and Consecration will deal with it in time. I know he hasn't got enough mana for the... some of that just yet, but he doesn't pick up a good answer, and obviously the Sea Giant is going to cause an issue. There are only the 2 Sea Giants, the 1 Alakir, maybe the 2 Corpse Takers that do present a serious threat though, and obviously Hagatha if the game starts to drag on.
I mean, this already is a serious enough threat. Like you said,
because it's too early,
Yeah, exactly, and the Flame Tongue helps to kind of amp it up a little bit, but it's far from necessary, I would argue. This is still plenty enough damage piling through. And again, from Bequiet, you know, good positioning there with the Flame Tongue, so he's buffing the 1/1s, as well as the Corpse Taker with Wind Fury, tick, tick, tick. Just very nice, clean Hearthstone being played here. And with a second equality picked up, but still no Juggler or Avenging Wrath. For Mitsuhide, he just never had a chance in this matchup.
And that is a massive deal because his other 2 decks are Quest Rogue and Warlock. And there's still Paladin available for Bequiet, so this Warlock's going to have to do a lot of serious work. It's going to have to win a mirror and then beat the 2 aggro decks. Absolutely.
I think if Mitsuhide decides to go for this Warlock up against the Shaman, which I imagine he probably will, that feels like it's going to be a much more favourable matchup for the Warlock than the Quest Rogue.
But does the Quest Rogue ever beat the Paladin? Does it ever beat the Shaman?
Yeah, but it doesn't have to. I don't think.
What I mean is you might as well queue it now against the Shaman where you might get lucky than queue it later on against the Paladin where it's not ever going to get lucky. It's like a throwaway deck at this point.
So no matter what happens at this point, as this last hero standing, you have to win an unfavourable if he's going to have a chance here. But I'm saying if you queue up Warlock, beat the Shaman.
Oh, and save the Rogue for the Warlock.
Save the Rogue for the Warlock. Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking you would get that far. Yeah, of course you save the Warlock. I am going completely insane.
But no, it's interesting then because if you queue the Warlock into their Shaman and win, they queue up their Warlock for a mirror to be, or would they queue up the Paladin next? Would they go probably the Warlock for the mirror?
I think you take the Paladin. Oh, it's a really control-y lineup, isn't it? Yeah, okay, you probably take the mirror.
But anyway, I still think, no matter what, kind of very roughly mapping out in my head, this is the way to go.
Yeah.
Bequiet, I believe in the other time we saw him on stream against this exact matchup, he went for a very similar style of play, keeping Hagatha in his hand because he realizes while he can get a decent amount of early board, maybe get a little bit of chip damage in, basically that's not how he's winning this game.
Hagatha is definitely the way forward. You get the early chip, whatever. You've got so much stuff that does that. You're going to draw into it, but you only have 1 Hagatha. Do you think she can get it done? I think she possibly can. She didn't last time when we saw this, though.
She did not. It wasn't even close last time, to be perfectly honest. Even though Bequiet got a bunch of burn spells and launched them all off on the final turn that he survived, just the 3 damage every turn, even kind of disregarding the healing that it gives you for the Warlock, it's more just as an upgraded steady shot for the Hunter, just a 3 damage to face every single turn, because there's basically no healing in this deck outside of the armor from Hagatha, the Scale Hides, and maybe Healing Rain or something off Hagatha. It's far from certain that you will get respectable heal.
The weird thing with Hagatha is she is so varied in what she does as the Swamp Ooze is played.
Oh, I guess it's Control Warlock, isn't it? So no Skull.
So with Hagatha, there's sort of 4 or 5 fantastic results.
Right.
A whole cluttery dumpster of stuff left over.
Exactly. It always seems that you end up with... Why is it always Forked Lightning? That's always the card I see that seems to be generated a million times.
That's because that's the one that you hold on to it just in case it does something. So it's always in hand. Like Cryostasis, you just get it played on something and get it over with. Forked Lightning just sits in your hand like, I might get a good use out of this, and you never, ever do.
It doesn't. It's never good. It's never, ever good, especially against like a Warlock. Like, what are you ever going to be doing against that? As Bequiet, kind of playing I don't know, a little bit quicker than what I would have expected him to play, given what his early mulligan was. Again, keeping that Hagatha for the late game plan. But I suppose with this line of play, in an optimistic, if you look at it under an optimistic light, it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah, you're getting 2 chances to win the game. You might just get it done, like with the assault. And if you don't, you might cripple the Warlock enough that you only need 1 of those lava bursts or whatever before they get their healing.
However, this does, to an extent, put a damper on the other side of the plan. Because like you were saying, it's not just that you are going for an aggressive plan and your control plan is still just as good. You are slightly weakening it, I would argue, because you can't go coin Hagatha now. You have less minions to generate spells with Hagatha afterwards. Like, you kind of have to be careful about how much you go for this aggressive plan. Because if you put all your resources into killing them quickly and it doesn't work, your Hagatha becomes a significantly less potent.
Yeah, that's a very good way of looking at this matchup, but I don't know, I think that there's enough stuff comes after Hagatha that you can grind it down, this early damage. Like you say, if you draw a Sea Giant now, you're suddenly looking in a fantastic spot.
And, you know, he's, in a way, he's playing the way that even Paladin plays to beat the Warlock, where he's got Earthen Might instead of Blessing of Kings, which is obviously the premier card against Warlock. You want to get your minions nice and big so they can't be killed off. But the thing is, half of Blessing of Kings is kind of less good, less than half as good as Blessing of Kings.
It's the sort of the numbers matter.
Right, like, exactly.
The exact break points matter is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, that's
obviously
exactly
the numbers matter. That's kind of the point of Hearthstone.
Yes, 2-2 for 2 is, less than half as good as 4-4 for 4. As Bequiet has it easily killed off by the Spellstone here. And now is not even necessarily ahead on board. I suppose the Corpse Taker can start to amp things up a little bit for the moment. But the thing is, it's just a Hellfire, a Defile, something like that, or even leading into Lord Godfrey, which Mitsuhide kept off the mulligan once again. It's just these small things that are needed to close this out for Bequiet, and then he pretty much is forced into shifting over to the Hagatha game plan, which, you know, is far from over. The game is not over at that point. Hagatha is an incredibly powerful Death Knight.
Yeah, I don't think we've necessarily worked out how to best use her yet. And she's okay in this deck, but I mean, overall, I think there probably is a Hagatha deck, maybe something to do with Shudderwox, that ends up being really powerful. And I don't think we've yet, either the time is not right for her to be absolutely busted, or we haven't worked it out yet.
As for the moment, Mitsuhide here kind of taking the worst turn he's going to take probably for the rest of the game, because that was, no really good removal there that he could throw down, couldn't heal himself up, so he just has to go for the silence to try and counteract the potential for a Flame Tongue or an Earthen Might on the Wind Fury minion of the Corpse Taker. But for the next few turns, he could just go Godfrey, Twisting Nether, Void Lord, Gul'dan. Even if he doesn't get anything back with Gul'dan, he'll probably be under such little pressure at that point that he'll still be absolutely fine.
Godfrey a little bit tricky now.
Oh, yeah.
Nicely worked out by Bequiet to play around it there. Very important you do play around Godfrey, especially when your opponent's kept a card. What cards does your opponent keep that he hasn't played so far?
Ooh, good question. I would probably expect it to be Gul'dan. Maybe Rin? Would you keep Rin in this matchup? It does go for, it does go to fatigue very often, I would say.
Yes, it's a tight one, but it's definitely on the list of cards that you know.
I agree. I would consider Godfrey.
Especially when you've built your lineup with this in mind. Like, it's not something you're going to suddenly forget exists, hopefully, as you're me.
As Mitsuhide taking, a pretty unfavorable trade here, it still puts him in a decent spot on board, but it's getting a little bit scary, because if he was to start to see cards like the Alakir over the next few turns, the Flame Tongue, stuff like that, the damage spells and heroes and minions, then it gets a little bit shaky, but at the same time, he's still got some very powerful turns coming up.
The payoff for the Hagatha is coming up, though, here. With this early attack, now Bequiet's going to be in the situation where if he does get one of the super Hagatha cards, he can win the game on the spot with these Primal Fins and, like, a Bloodlust. That's GG.
Oh, man. If we see Lava Bursts finishing off this game, it would remind me of simpler, happier times in Hearthstone.
Happier?
Happier times.
Did you make Legend or something?
I don't think I did, actually. I was so bad back then.
I hated the Shaman Stone era, I must admit. I didn't hate it. I don't hate any
actually, no, towards the end of Aggro Shaman, I was definitely there.
Yeah, I know you were really good at Shaman at the time.
A Trog into a Golem. I mean, who was bad at Shaman? Oh,
me.
Sorry.
I actually was bad at that deck. I don't know why, I just was. was the one that kept everybody else getting to Legend. I just sat there and let them beat the whole of the 30 million users of the game.
You're a benevolent god, Neil, as Hagatha the Witch, kept in the starting hand, comes down as soon as it possibly could. Well, okay, not as soon as it possibly could, because the coin was utilized earlier on to kill off a Doomsayer. But as we mentioned, we felt like it was definitely worth it just to try and go for both game plans. Pressure, which has worked better than I would expect, actually. Obviously, it hasn't won Bequiet the game because his opponent is still alive and has got a bunch of taunts in the way now. But at the same time, 9 health is very scary at this point.
Just for a second there, I thought I was at the Fort Lightning. The Hex has been defended all game.
This is... I gotta say, I feel for you here, Neil. Like, look at these cards. They look so similar. It's all blue lightning cards.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Such a shame. Shaman, Master of Lightning, zapping away here. And forcing another AoE from Mitsu, but unfortunately for Bequiet, Mitsu has a lot of AoE right now. Not necessarily enough health to really be able to manipulate it.
Yeah, this is a weird one for Mitsu. You know, he doesn't really want to go for Gul'dan because obviously his Void Lord was just hexed. But this, oh my god, this just is a testament, a showcase of how ridiculously good Gul'dan is. Even though it's the worst Gul'dan it's possible to get, it shows how much you want that hero power, paying 10 mana for it, just so that he can just kill every minion, every single turn. He doesn't even care about the Void Lords, because he's probably half expecting the next one to get hexed also.
This is going to be a big deal, another big minion coming up.
And a Flame Tongue.
Yeah, Gul'dan, the Master of Frogs, is going to have to do a lot of overtime to make sure this game gets won. But like you say, it's the hero power is just so absurd.
Yeah.
Looking at this lightning storm here to kill a frog.
No, surely not.
Yeah, let's do it.
Like, they could go wide. This is controllable. Like, they play Ooze, Beetles, Stonehills, things like that.
Right.
War. That is a very intriguing card, though. Warlock, you know, Control Warlock suffers with this to a lesser extent. But one of the big weaknesses of Warlock, Q-Block in particular, is single big minions. They rely on doing their own broken stuff before your opponent does, and that's how they win. Like, against the likes of Spiteful Druid, you rely on killing them with Giants and Doom Guards the majority of the time before they get to do that.
He's going to get charge out of this, just to interrupt you there. The rope is burning, and if he can get some charge minions, he's going to have to be quick. Kalento actually played this in his version of the deck, like, just naturally, but he played it in Shudderwock.
Oh, Vrygul is pretty cool here, actually. Just because it's a minion that, if removed, has a death rattle. He just never trades with it because it's a 5/1.
Yeah, but it needs to die or it's going to get damaged through. This is a nice evolution.
Is a very nice selection of minions. That's slightly less good as he upgrades. A 4/3 that could have gotten some armor down to a 3/3.
I get the feeling that was just the last one as he hit end turn. He never actually get to see what it evolved into.
Right. Oh, that's a good point. Still probably would have gone with the Despicable Dreadlord, but...
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well,
so for Mitsuhide, this is kind of the situation you end up in the late game with Control Warlock, where it's not about how you clear the board, or it's not about can I clear the board, it's about how do I best clear the board.
Right.
You have to maximize your efficiency at this point, realizing what are the best cards for you at this point. What do you need in the late game? Because, for example, if he's vulnerable to a single giant minion later on, maybe he just keeps a Twisted Nether to use as a pseudo-assassinate to kill off one minion. He's got a lot to consider here in terms of how he clears off the board.
This is where Bequiet's got to keep it coming, because the 3 health heal per turn that we keep on about is just awkward. Jen's not completely terrible in this match, is it?
Not indeed.
It's a card that both of us are a little bit sort of sad about the stats on.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's one of the things we were talking about last night. But these spells from Bequiet are absolutely on point. This is unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Like, Unstable Evolution was absurd.
4 or 5 we named, yeah.
Ancestral Spirit, absurd.
But that's the thing, there aren't any middling spells. Maybe Lava Burst is kind of middling. Most of them are insanely good.
Lightning Bolt is like
dumpster.
Fine. Actually, Lightning Bolt's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, there's not much in the middle ground, and that's why it's an interesting deck. If you're going to get 10 or 12 cards, you're going to get 2 or 3 busted ones, but Bequiet made the right play of getting them all in a row.
Yeah.
Bloody decisions.
As now for Mitsu, he's in a situation where he can't fully clear the board, which is pretty much the best possible scenario that Bequiet can hope for.
Double Dark Pact, though, so if Mitsu can even just buy a little time, he's going to get well out of any immediate danger and then buy himself some time to deal with boards.
So he's thinking, what do I die to? Even in, like, the worst case scenario of double lava burst or something absurd like that, he still does not die, which is why I like holding back the Dark Pacts here. Like, he never dies in this scenario, I don't think.
Not to anything he can stop in the real world.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you die here, I can't even think what it would be. So clearly, he's thinking these Dark Pacts will be better utilized later on maybe a Rin, maybe on a Void Lord itself, just to give yourself 3 Void Walkers so you're less vulnerable to a Hex. Or an Earthen Earth Shock.
An Earthen thing.
Earth Shock, yeah, for silence.
Tidal Surge can only go to minions, so that's not going to be much help.
Okay, Tidal Surge is a very mediocre card. It's not bad,
You're right, okay.
but it's not good.
Okay,
like,
you've just been waiting for that, haven't you? Whatever came next, you think, I could use this card.
But it is, like, you know, it gets through a taunt, so it's kind of damage to face, but it might not activate that way because it can't go face.
Why does it always happen straight away? Why can't I have, like, just a moment where I look good?
You did. You look good for, like, 30 seconds.
Excellent. Take it. All right, so Mitsu's been clinging on to this nether for dear life, and now you're seeing why, because it's got to the point where he needs to use it.
Oh, man.
I think he's thinking, do I give up 3 health, or do I dump the Doomsayer straight down now, which is probably the best he's going to get out of it all game.
You reckon? I think, considering what he knows, there's 2 spells in his opponent's hand and something that's worse than a Fire Elemental because he played the Fire Elemental over it.
Sure.
So whatever he plays next turn, it has to be able to have 7 attack on board, or he has to be able to kill off the Doomsayer, maybe with the help of spells, after the hero power takes out another minion. So I think hero power here is probably what I would go for. I don't really know what he's setting up for on the following turn.
He's just setting up for drawing another card.
How does he benefit from a clear board on the next turn? Like you said, it's something off the top. So Void Lord off the top, I'm not entirely sure. I think in the majority of instances,
sure,
it would be okay. But this is, you know, this is a safer play, I suppose.
There's not much left in the deck for the Shaman that is better than a Fire Elemental, I guess, is the point. And of course, if you're going to draw Stonehill, that's about as good as he could hope for there.
Fair point. Fair point. And I guess maybe he's thinking about the rest of his deck. You know, he's probably got a better idea of what's left in there in terms of his draws.
Oh, there's 2 lackeys, there's a Void Lord, there's this. There was some stuff.
All right. I concede.
Yes. Beat him into the ground.
I still wouldn't have hated it, though. Either way, there was definitely merit for it, because he's getting down to a pretty low health total here.
And this is where it gets difficult. So just because he doesn't know what ways of removing Tarlurk with Hex, for instance, there are from these random spells. That's kind of how random works.
I mean, if he picks anything other than Rin here, I will eat my hat.
You haven't got a hat.
Because I was wrong the last time.
Wow. I think Crane threatened to eat a hat as well. I think it's if Rogue is good. if Quest Rogue is good starting next week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so hat makers all around the world are trying to make Quest Rogue work.
As now, this is kind of just a gamble, I suppose, by not going for the Dark Pact, that there is no more Silence or Hex effect, which obviously you're only going to be getting Silence off the Hagatha, so it'd have to be exactly Earthshock, I believe, or another Hex. But it's worked out all right for him here. You know, he's going to be getting the seals out of it, and this is how he starts running away with it. But
timely reminder that Alakir is still in the deck.
Yeah. Which I guess is what Bequiet is setting up for, isn't it? It's keeping the Flame Tongue back so that you can go Flame Tongue, Alakir.
Yeah. And I hope their board is empty at the time, which somehow it might be at this way. It's just insane how badly Mitsu's game plan was ruined by that Void Lord getting hexed. Yeah. But he's still in such a good spot thanks to this hero power.
Spot. And, you know, Mitsu's too good of a player to let that happen. Like, obviously getting the Rin and the seals is good, but that's not his first priority. It's doing stuff like this. It's staying alive. Like, if he played 2 seals every turn from here on in, it would be ridiculous, and he would probably die, rightly so. You know, it would be a good punish for playing too greedily for the Azaris instead of going for the hero powers, because his hero power is more important to do that every turn, to clear the board and actually to start killing his opponent. Because he's definitely behind on fatigue. The Warlock always is.
Oh. Not the card he's looking for.
He can go Bloodlust, but Again, that's a rush minion, not a charge minion, so it's only going to be 7 damage connecting through to the face. He just, Bequiet just has to pray that this board sticks. Maybe his opponent does not have the Hellfire or a 2 or Lackey Defile or something like that.
And this is where Mitsu again has that decision. So he's going to have to Hellfire because he's not even going to go for it. He's going to paralyze the board.
Yeah.
Of course, there's so much Hagatha stuff hanging around Bequiet's hand here.
I think basically anything other than Void Lord on that turn, like Hellfire would have been fine, maybe a bit too premature, but like not bad, because getting the 3 damage to face is relevant. Like you want to start doing that at some point in the future.
Do you Bloodlust now? You don't want to, but it might be the only time you get 6 damage out of it. But then it just gets healed back up again. I think you have to be more greedy than that.
And the thing is, if you make the read now that he doesn't have Hellfire and you want to wait until you have a bigger board, if you wait until you have a bigger board, he probably draws the Hellfire that you assume he doesn't have by that point anyway.
Maybe it's not even a read. Maybe it's I only win if Hellfire is the bottom card, at which point you just get super greedy and hope for the best.
Yeah. But even then, if it's not Hellfire, the bottom card, it's Lackey Defile. Or,
sure.
It's an almost impossibly specific order the cards have to come in for this Bloodlust to get enough damage to kill his opponent at the moment.
Yeah, and he's got all of the things you talked about, so it's all about now just Mitsu ironing out the minions and Bequiet not conceding, because he's always going to have this Alakia hope that he's clinging on to for a few turns.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Mitsu is obviously kind of starting to get afraid with this, which is why he's not just going snap, seal, hero power. But the thing is, like, I think anything else would just be probably like fancy play syndrome. Like, it's good enough here. The hero power on the eel and going for the seal. You're not dying to double Bloodlust. You're not dying to double Lava Burst into, or like triple Lava Burst. Like any of that nonsense, you're just not dying to quite yet. So it's fine. Get yourself that little bit closer to Rin, because even if Azari does not have the desired effect of completely destroying their deck because you're under too much pressure, the seals at the very least act as pseudo removal. Each of those demons clears something off, which is of the utmost importance.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have a huge amount of removal. You have plenty, but not like gigantic amounts. So yeah, just putting a minion on the board is recursive heal as opposed to recursive damage, basically.
For sure.
And again, Bequiet just desperately trying to almost, I mean, he hasn't had much choice, but stick an innocuous-looking board and whistle innocently in the corner and hope Mitsu doesn't notice there's a potential for Bloodlust, which of course is silly because it's the only card you worry about.
Yeah.
Maybe get a second Bloodlust. I mean, that's a thing.
It's things like that need to happen at the moment, isn't it? Because with Azari able to come down, obviously, I'm thinking of ways to counteract that. And, this is one of the gripes that people have with Warlock at the moment, is that Rin doesn't really have the counterplay at the moment. Unless you're playing an aggro deck and you can put them under so much pressure that they don't have time to play it, your ability to fight back against the effect isn't really there, especially when you draw cards like Totemic Might off of Hagatha's hero power.
And you know what card Mitsu hasn't played this game yet?
What?
The one they nerfed. Any of the nerfed cards.
He played a Dark Pact.
Yeah,
he played one pact.
But no Lackey, one pact, and the deck's still doing just fine. Thank you very much.
A fair point. And I think that's probably what people are hypothesizing about Warlock, is it's still going to be really good against control decks, isn't it? Like, the way it's working out now is it's meant to be weak to aggro decks because you can't get down a Void Lord quickly enough to survive.
And I like it. I think, apart from obviously even Paladin, the decks are going to function in the future, and that is what we want. I think the old style of saying people don't like this deck, let's blow it off the planet, was correct at the time, but for modern play, I think we wanted as many decks that are playable as possible.
Right. And well, that's the thing. None of the decks at the moment function in a way that has been seen as traditionally unfun by Blizzard. Like, it's not the crazy one-turn kill things that have been problematic in the past, but I mean, in this particular game, we're talking about some of the wider concepts in Hearthstone as Mitsuhide just is moving further and further towards a victory. Azari now in hand. So Bequiet has to get some kind of a draw card, and I mean, it's Shaman. What draw effects do they actually have on spells? Now that Ancestral Knowledge is rotated out, I don't really see what they have.
The dark path.
Don't ask.
All right. Brilliant.
Ask somebody good.
Well, there's
but you're right. There's just no way he's stopping this.
Ice fishing is it, right?
And Bequiet gives it up. He's got to the point where he can't win and stop the Azari. One game apiece, and now Bequiet has to choose between his Paladin and his Warlock, and I've written the last 2 games as him playing even, which is really genius piece of note-taking.
Oh, he's playing card deck, my favourite and very specific archetype.
Well done, me.
As that was such an impossibly crucial victory for Mitsuhide. If he didn't take that, it would just be almost impossible for him to take the series. Getting a 3-0 with Queststroke against the likes of even Paladin, even Shaman, and Warlock is slightly better.
And especially as its last hero.
Right, exactly. That's the thing. Like, when you're 2-0 down in last hero standing, you are miles and miles behind. Oh.
So, Bequiet.
Was I being an idiot?
No, I was, I think, actually.
One of us was definitely being an idiot.
Yeah, exactly. I think I've done it twice in this match already. It's time to get on to game number 3.
No, it wasn't me. He would have to win 3 times in a row.
I know it wasn't you. That's why I diverted the subject. Of course it wasn't you. Everybody in the world, apart from you, knew it wasn't you. I just wanted you to feel bad for a while.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, mate. That's very supportive of you.
That's all right. Anytime.
As to get this match going, this is the deck I was talking about earlier, because on the final match of the day yesterday, when it was Tyler up against Odemian, and he was playing the Q block up against the Control Warrior, I knew I'd seen a Q block that had a copy of Rin in it, and this is that deck from Bequiet. We saw the Doomguard earlier. This is not a Control Warlock. This is a Q block that is running Rin, which is going to be of the utmost importance here, and it's clearly indicating his game plan, because he had Gul'dan in his starting hand, which, I mean, as a Q block, you're not really keeping Gul'dan.
Right.
You want Giant, you want Lackey, you want Skull, obviously, Giant and Skull being the most important ones. But keeping Rin is kind of saying he doesn't necessarily need that explosive Q block start, because of the way it's currently standing, he can just win on fatigue.
Yeah, I mean, you treat it like control versus control because you've got Rin, and there's so many. This is why Q block is favoured. There's a lot of things that it does about the same, and 1 or 2 things it does that just sometimes win the game. Not that often, like 5–10% of the time, but suddenly you go to 60–40 just with those extra bits and pieces.
Right.
And I think this version of Warlock might be even weaker in the mirror than usual, except when you draw in. Just because things like Shroom Brewer are just dead cards.
I agree. This is being brought to counteract any aggro decks that were being thrown around, like even Paladin is a lot better against
Priest in particular as well.
And Priest, exactly. That's what I was going to bring up, because it's weird how it's shaken out where, I mean, it's kind of not weird. Like, we've learned this from Hearthstone, where the best control decks have a quick, strong win condition. It's like Raza Anduin Priest, or Q-Block, which has a strong win condition, or Freeze Mage. All these kind of decks that don't rely on fatigue generally tend to be in a higher tier than the pure fatigue deck.
And that's because of the efficiency. If you can win the game with 3 cards and your other 27 stop you losing it, that's more efficient than having to draw 12 cards that win and 18 that stop you losing, you know.
Yeah.
This is going to be interesting because they both have Rin, which means that the person who's going to exert the most pressure with minions, which is where this Shroom Brewer may come in, is going to be the one who can play more seals. Because the one who doesn't is going to have to start actually defending its dying.
And therefore, I would probably put the Q block ahead in terms of the amount of pressure that
I would in terms of deck construction, but in terms of the hands, actually, Mitsu has an assortment of odds and ends that might just be irritating enough to cost Bequiet mana, much needed mana after Rin.
I agree, but Bequiet's hand is starting to look very, very powerful.
It is.
Like Lackey into Faceless. The most important thing, however, for Bequiet, which will really solidify in our minds what style of plan he's going for, is whether or not he plays the Skull. Because obviously, traditionally in Q-Block, you just slam Skull as quick as you can, unless you've got Mounted Giant stuff going on, because you want to pull those demons from your hand. But Azari itself is a demon. If you complete all the seals from Rin and have Azari in your hand, you're never going to get the Battle Cry, because it's just going to get sucked out of your hand with Skull of the Minari. So I imagine from Bequiet, considering he has literally no demons in hand, we're probably not going to see the Skull this game.
Yeah, I agree entirely with that, especially when you know your opponent's playing Weapon Destruction as well in a deck that draws like half of its deck in 6 or 7 turns.
Yeah.
Just not a card that does anything. The time we might see it is if in some weird way you end up getting a second lot of Rin stuff going on. You just want to suck a 10/10 into play for free later in the game.
Oh, speaking of second lot of Rin stuff, and this for Mitsuhide kind of becomes a little bit more confusing because the downside... when I first look at this, what I say is it gives him the ability to just play Rin onto the board and not care about killing it off himself. But that's not necessarily true because he doesn't know that his opponent has a Rin in hand. And the downside of playing Rin is not only that your opponent can silence it, it's that they can copy it. We could see Bequiet going for Faceless Dark Pact potentially when the Rin comes down. So I imagine even with the second copy of Rin being found by Mitsuhide, he will still not be playing this naked. He will want to play it and make sure it dies off with something like a Dark Pact as soon as possible.
As it happens, though, despite the fact you are correct on that, it is going to be a Rin from Bequiet as soon as he is ready to do so. But he is losing the getting hit in the face race at this point. And neither of them are able to set up their Rin comfortably at the moment. And this is where it's going to get interesting from the stuff you were talking about, is that Mitsu doesn't want it copied. He's got a good idea now that Bequiet might not be able to do his own Rin.
Yeah, and like, you know, Bequiet is playing defensive. Like, the line of play, he kept a card that clearly was not Giant, or it would have been played. It's probably not Skull, or it would have been played unless he'd also found the Rin. Like, I'm trying to think what it could be at this point that is not Rin.
Yeah, it's Rin.
It's like it's probably Rin, isn't it?
Or Gul'dan, I guess.
Which maybe, therefore, because if Mitsuhide does make the read that his opponent has Rin, maybe he plays his own Rin because he realizes even if his opponent copies it, or even because the Faceless just came down, copying it is not what Mitsuhide is scared of at the moment. He just wants to give himself the seals as reliably as possible. So he's correctly noticed here, I believe, that the only thing this Rin is vulnerable to at the moment is silence. And if it is silenced, who cares? He plays the second one.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's going to happen. You would think here is going to get silent, the second one's going to come down, and Bequiet's going to bash his head on the table.
And, I mean, again, this is not good for Mitsuhide because he doesn't want this to get silenced. He would ideally like to have both set of seals for if it goes to the hyper late game. But I still think this is probably a good read from him to play. If you're ever going to play Rin in a Warlock mirror without killing it off right away, this is the situation in which to do so.
Now the question is, do you risk the second one? I see why not, but it's slightly more difficult.
So obviously, again, this is where open deck lists completely change how you're playing it, because while usually it's only one copy of Silence being played in Q-Block, very rare to see two copies, I believe. It's possible, you know, maybe there is another Spellbreaker knocking about in that list, but Mitsuhide not afraid of it here. He's thinking it's more important to get it down early than to wait for the Dark Pact, you know. He can't wait forever because it might be the bottom card in his deck, whereas he's looked at all the risk. Faceless and Silence have both been played, which is the two worst possible outcomes when you played Rin. He's analyzed that and he's just throwing it down.
Yeah, Bequiet's in a bit of a mess, but he's starting to accumulate Giants and Lackeys and Demons and Gul'dans. Maybe he has to take an attitude here that I don't get it done with my own Rin anytime soon. I have to stop Mitsu from being able to play his awful 2-2 and 3-3 Rin seals. Because those are the ones that really do you. Like, they're the ones that take a lot of time. Like, if you get to 4-4 and 5-5, they occupy the board well enough that you just do them.
That's very true, and he's kind of transitioning over to that plan. This is what is so lovely about this play from Bequiet is, like you said, in a way, it's transitioning over to the more aggressive style of play. Yeah. But at the same time, it's opening up his own more defensive style of play, because now that he's alleviated from the pressure from his opponent, he has the ability to play his own Rin seals, whilst also denying his opponent the ability to play their Rin seals, because they're under too much pressure.
Yeah, the Gul'dans are going to make this pretty interesting as well, because Mitsu's Gul'dan is going to be amazing, and at the moment Bequiet's Gul'dan is not, but Bequiet can sort that out pretty soon.
Yeah, I think it's only like one draw away from it being absurd, because I mean, say he gets cube off the top, he can go cubes and spellstone his own cube, which obviously much less efficient than going for a Dark Pact, and obviously Mitsuhide is going to deal with it, but Bequiet has to be thinking he's getting close to a very powerful hand here.
Oh. There is the cube, Giant ready to go. And Mitsu is not able to get those seals ticking away just yet.
Yeah. I like this a lot from Bequiet as well. Would you have respected the Void Lord there, or do you think he should be keeping up with the pressure?
I mean, the instinct is to play the Void Lord, right?
Yeah.
That is definitely the instinct. You've got Gul'dan to come, but when you see this on the board and you go, oh, he's going to kill that, and that's his whole turn gone, and you play Void Lord next turn. If they do kill it, because all your mana's gone for Mitsuhide, and if they don't kill it, you play Void Lord next turn and back up your 8/8 Giant. So either way, this is better.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because, I mean, if you're not facing down any minions, the taunt means nothing, and an 8/8 is just better than a 3/9.
Yeah.
In the most basic way of looking at it.
Yeah, well, basic good, it helps.
Yeah, exactly. You want to get that damage to the face.
Beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code. There you go. It's basic.
I actually did computing AS level. I should definitely know what that means, but I did nothing other than play Hearthstone during it.
And that is why
that's where it all began.
Without a degree. Okay, so moving swiftly on. Don't do that at home, kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Second Giant has been drawn if he wants it, so all sorts of options are now open to Bequiet.
Yeah, and he's going with kind of a weird play here, because this is not a particularly high value play at the moment, because, or not as high as it could have been, because he could have played Void Lord to get more demons pulled out. But the thing is, that has kind of a couple of downsides, because you want to play your big threat as soon as possible to keep up the pressure, because if he finds something like a Hellfire now, this is a huge amount of damage pushing through on the subsequent turn. And also, having more Void Walkers in your pool isn't even necessarily a good thing. You know, he doesn't want to have those clogging up his resurrection pool.
Didn't this happen to Orange yesterday? I'm just looking at Mitsu's.
It did, but Mitsu just got the most basic. His Void Lord just died, but you are correct.
Orange actually just pulled all Void Lords and I think
like 3 Void Lords had died, or at least 2. And yeah, you are correct. It was all Void Walkers. He still won that game, however, which I was very happy about, because I don't like to see people lose from Gul'dan nonsense.
Bequiet has played this extremely well, I feel, so far. The instinct is just to go for the Rin, but look what's happened to Mitsu, who played the Rin. He's played 2 Rins, and he's got nowhere.
Yeah. I don't know. So the thing is from Bequiet is, you say he's played it very well because he has not played the Rin when, like you said, it would have been probably slightly too slow tempo play, slightly apathetic. But he kept it on the mulligan. If it's not a good card in this, if it's been a terrible card for him to play at every point so far, why keep it? Because in the early
your opponent doesn't play Rin and you actually draw your Dark Pack, then suddenly you've got a secondary win condition.
I agree with you. I know that in this matchup, Rin helps a lot, but it feels like it's not a focused game plan from Bequiet, you know, where he's not going for the full cube lock stuff with cubes, giants, dark packs, all that stuff. You know, he's going half on that and half on Rin.
But also the half-half, you're going to draw one of those halves. So you've got the Rin in your hand,
right.
You've got 29 other cards. Either you draw dark packs and defensive stuff, or you draw giants.
Okay.
And he hasn't drawn dark packed all game, I don't think.
No.
So that's not helped his Rin. And why I think he's played it well is he's been willing to go, okay, this is the other half of the draw. I had the Rin option, that didn't come to fruition.
Yeah.
But if you keep a normal cube lock hand, once in a blue moon, you just draw like some dark packs and some bits and pieces, and it just gets a bit clammy. The Rin means that you can't have that mediocre draw. You either draw the Rin way of winning, or you draw the Bosch way.
I like your reasoning as well. For Bequiet, now he's starting to go very much all in on the classic cube lock style of play. Because that copy of Owl, I believe, the Iron Beak Owl, has already been played by Mitsuhide. One of the most powerful concepts in this mirror is just that you have a silence ready to come down, and the cube block therefore cannot go for things like Cube Tal'Daram and not pop either of their cubes because they are too afraid of a silence. But once that goes, you can make plays like this where you just go giant into cube, and the next turn you faceless that cube. Bequiet knew this works out basically every time because there's a strong minion which has a death rattle that summons an even more threatening board. So for the moment, Bequiet is just fine. He's got 8 damage on the board, attacking face every turn. He's in a great spot. And if these are killed off, he just has lethal on board.
So what Mitsu did well last term, he went, okay, he changed his game plan. It's like, okay, I've got to get these seals motoring because now this turn he can actually make 2 more seals and eat 8 damage. He still has the Twisting Nether for when things go a bit pear-shaped, which they're going to do when you're facing down 2 stacked cubes. So he's charging towards that Rin and hoping he can deal with enough stuff afterwards.
Right. One thing, however, is that he already has 10 cards in hand, so double Rin Seal would mean burning a card. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing here. Like, okay, it's not a good thing.
If you've got Gul'dan sorted, you're okay.
Right, exactly. You've got Gul'dan, Rin, both Void Lords. You've got a Dark Pact. You've played a Spellstone, so the healing is there. You found your Silence. Like, I agree this is probably a better line of play, because I think the thing is, even though, like you said, at the moment, he can E8 damage on this turn quite happily, if he goes for double seal on this turn and things go worse and he hasn't made a defensive play on this turn, maybe he can't play a defensive turn, a defensive enough of a turn with his 10 mana on the following turn, which is why he's going for the Void Lord here, because again, his opponent has used Silence on the first copy of Rin.
Really complicated situation for Bequiet. Obviously, he can proc his 2 cubes, get a load of Giants at some time very soon. He needs to decide now if he's ever, air quotes, going to use Rin.
Right.
Like any time in the next 4 or 5 turns, if he's going to go for Rin ever, got to dump it on the table about now.
Yeah, probably. I think you are probably right in that one.
It may turn out to be useful in some sort of late value nonsense game if Mitsu blows your deck up, but I think Bequiet is looking at winning it with these 2 cubes. Yeah, and here's the Rin. What are you going to silence? Silence one of these bad boys and get on with it.
Yeah. So this, I think, is a very interesting point to go back to one of the most decisive turns from Bequiet, because we've been talking a lot about Mitsuhide's plays in terms of how he utilized his Silence on an early Lackey. But for Bequiet, if we actually think back to when he silenced a Rin, like, obviously, when you see a Rin on the board in the mirror, you silence it every time. You know, it's the most scary card. But Mitsuhide had just played Stonehill, and the Rin came down. It was the natural one that's in the deck. Like, it wasn't the one from Rin, I believe.
Oh, that's a good spot. So you're saying he's got a very strong read.
Exactly. Because when do you ever play Rin without Dark Pact in this matchup?
You just Stonehilled into one.
Exactly.
But also... Yeah, okay, there's no also.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. But at the same time, even if you knew there was a Rin in your opponent's hand, maybe Bequiet would still have made that play, because giving your opponent only one set of seals, if it goes to the hyper late game, is still valuable, because there's a lot less minion stuff that they're playing. But then, on the other side of that, if you keep back that Spellbreaker and let them have 2 sets of seals, maybe you kill them by silencing a Void Lord, so it doesn't even matter.
Okay, well, this is the crunch time coming up. Bequiet is going to have at least a little while to try and get these Giants into the face. But Mitsu's on a couple of seals already. Mitsu's board looks pretty tame right now. It's sort of hanging by a thread to some degree.
But that's kind of good for him. Like, this is what Mitsuhide wants, where he's definitely behind on board, but he's not that far behind. Like, he's got enough taunts on the board to stay alive, and then when his opponent gets too greedy, gets too much stuff on the board, he rips the Twisting Nether and doesn't actually lose that much from his own deck. So
this is great timing on this skull. Bequiet's realised he's never destroying Mitsu's deck. So he's saying, okay, do you want to play your 5/5 and 6/6 seal now? Because if you do, my skull's going to be active, and if you don't, you've got to waste 2 mana blowing it up, which costs you a whole turn on your Rin. That's it, and more so than that, on this turn, it's a very, very crucial distinction that the ooze has to be played right now, because ideally here, Mitsuhide wants to go attack, defile, Twisting Nether, blow up the whole board, and he's in a decent spot there. He's not under too much pressure, and there's not too many threats left behind. And he thinks it's Doomguard. Exactly. He thinks that if he doesn't destroy the skull, there's going to be a huge amount of pressure coming forward. And even if it is just a Void Lord, that's consistent damage. It's not much, but it's a very resilient minion that's coming through them. Yeah, you play your 2 seals for 5/5 and 6/6, get hit in face. Does not look that pleasant. So maybe on this turn, because you can just leave those 2 cubes up in play, we just see something like, a couple of other minions here, Lackey or Librarian, whatever, and Ooze and Hero Power. Like, you just leave those cubes intact for the moment, take the 8 damage, destroy that weapon, and then you go for Defile. Yeah, then you go, you play the 5th seal, okay, yeah. But then on the next turn, you go Defile, Twisting Nether. Yeah, you've got to plod along with those seals, otherwise you do just not win. But
I love this play from Mitsuhide. I think out of going for the Twisting Nether on this turn or the Ooze on this turn, this was by far the most important play because it also, as you pointed out, lets you play a seal.
This is high-level stuff. Like, Bequiet has just turned this.
Level.
So now Bequiet, something he can do is trade in his cubes and play 2 seals. So, okay, I'm not scared of you playing a seal. Have you got Nether? Have you not? If you have, I'm going to play 2 more seals.
That's true. That's very true. Because the 2-2 and the 3-3, he doesn't really care about it.
Sure, he just wants to progress.
Exactly.
The quest, basically.
I think I like it. I think I like it. This is the turn that you forego the hero power because obviously your opponent's just going to heal back up anyway. You don't really care about these minions at the moment.
I think what he's trying to set up is maybe in some worlds only losing 1 cube. So it's like, do you want to Twisting Nether these 2 giants and have a cube still there? Maybe he's trying to set that up.
Yeah, and actually now that I look at it again, I'm kind of liking that turn a little bit less because yes, it allows you to progress your Rin seals a little bit further. But what it's saying, because you're giving up your giants to the Twisting Nether, is you are trying to win on Rin seals as well. That's now your win as well as your opponent. But Mitsuhide is just playing the final seal and then Azari. Like, he's miles ahead at the moment. And I think this is probably still the best play because no matter what you do here, your giants are always going to die.
And he did do what I said, but it's going to be the same thing because the cube just gets proc. So he didn't do what I said. He just went for the original 4 giants plan, really.
Right, exactly. And what it means now is, yes, Mitsuhide clears the board and Bequiet gets to play another 2 seals, but Mitsuhide is just 1 turn away from activating that Azari. And he's got way more stuff in hand. He's got a Void Lord to protect him. And yes, his opponent does as well. But he's going to get the first Azari, which puts him pretty far ahead.
Yes, because you take 10 as the defender in that situation.
Yeah.
So maybe Bequiet could have found a different way there, but...
And yep, incredibly easy for Bequiet here. You don't really consider anything else. I mean, the fact that you only have 1 5-mana seal left means potentially you could consider going for 1 seal and hero power, because then on the following turn you can go double seal, but this way your mana next turn is more flexible, which I think is probably the way to go about it, because hero power there was not that good.
So important as well in terms of stopping 10-10s from boshing you in the face. Bequiet has 2 Void Lords left, but Mitsu only has 1.
Very true.
So, plus there's the Doom Guards later on as well.
There's only 1 Doom Guard left, though, I believe.
Sure, and it's hard to get into play constructively as well, so it's really close.
But at the same time, there's so many good cards left at the bottom of Bequiet's deck. I think he's got another Giant, because he only cubed 1. He's got another Doom Guard. He's got no more lackeys, I believe.
But he's not going to have a deck. They're not going to have decks. It's the hands they've got to use. And there's 2 Void Lords versus 1. Is there anything else that swings this? This is almost calculable at this game. There are games like this out there.
So this goes what? Azari... So if this plays out in the way that it most standardly would be expected to, Azari, both decks are blown up. Mitsuhide feels like he's miles in the lead because he just goes... he goes for Siphon Soul, Hero Power to face, Azari to face, which is just miles ahead.
It is.
And he could just go face on this turn as well, which I love.
Sure.
As well. First of all, I was considering trading, but like, why would you? You are the aggressor now. You have Siphon Soul, Hero Power. You are so far ahead in terms of damage. This forces Bequiet to do something other than just playing Azari.
I mean, he can trade Hellfire Ping and everything's dead.
That sucks though, because you're not playing Azari. Like, if you don't play Azari right
gets
now,
a card and 1 extra head of fatigue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad, but
which is dreadful.
But your 10-10 sticks to the board.
That's so bad.
In some scenarios, your 10-10 sticks to the board, and you've got the double Void Lords to start smacking away with.
What are the chances, though, that Mitsu does not have either Siphon Soul or the other copy of Twisting Nether? Like,
he's got also,
or a Void Lord, like this.
Just to keep being devil's advocate, Bequiet has double Dark Pact. That's a lot of health in a fatigue race.
True.
I mean, Mitsu does as well, but he doesn't know that, right?
I mean, like I said, he can't play Azari here. Like, as much as
he can't play Azari. The way Mitsu's played it means that Bequiet can't. And the whole game has been this tiptoeing around, trying to get your Azari down. And Bequiet saw that he was losing that race and tried to take evasive action. But Mitsu saw the evasive action coming.
He saw that trap.
He did. But all tidied up in a much better way than I suggested.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, this is where Bequiet is going to give it, his best shot. This is where he kind of starts to have a chance because, like you said, he's got a lot of heal. But, oh man, even then, like, Mitsuhide has got even more heal
No, that's the thing. I wasn't comparing the two hands. I was saying, why Bequiet's gone this way is because he looks at his hand and says, this is good enough. This should win me a good percentage of this position. If Mitsu hasn't got the same cards as me, but Mitsu has basically got the same cards.
However, actually, no, he does not have basically the same cards. Double Void Lord for Bequiet is a massive deal here.
Yeah, I realise, yeah.
Yeah. So, for Mitsu, he can push forward this damage on this turn, obviously with, Siphon Soul, Defile Hero Power, like, or Siphon Soul Spellstone. Actually, you'd probably save the Spellstone. Like, you know, something like that. Clear off the board as much as you can, or maybe even just go Siphon Soul everything face with the Hero Power as well, because you are trusting that your Void Lord will survive. But yeah, he's going with this play to clear the opponent's board, get that damage through to face, and just pray that this will be enough, because the thing is, even though Bequiet has 2 copies of Void Lord left, if he's not pressing Hero Power for 2 turns, that's not even better. Like, that's just worse in Fatigue almost.
Almost, but again, that Dark Pact he thinks is going to be in his favour. But you're right, suddenly it's equivalent to being 3 behind in Fatigue for 2 turns. But those Void Lords could get through. And Taldram's going to be a nuisance as well.
That's true. That is true.
He's not exactly the best Taldram in the world, but he's a nuisance Taldram.
And now for Mitsuhide, he kind of needs to worry, I think, as his primary thing now, as how does he utilize these Dark Pacts? You know, what minions does he play them on? Because obviously Lackey is 1 out of the way, because the 2-2 probably doesn't really do anything. The 8 heal will be more valuable in Fatigue. But on the other one, do you really want to kill a Godfrey? Do you have to wait until you have a Void Walker? Maybe your opponent doesn't leave you with a Void Walker because he could have a copy of Hellfire in hand, which we can see that he does. There's a lot you need to consider here, because if you end up losing out on 8 healing in Fatigue because you just didn't properly figure out what you were going to be Dark Pacting, that's awful. That is so bad for your plan.
You can see how close this is as far as the players are concerned by the fact that I don't think either of them have blinked for like 4 minutes.
Right.
They're both absolutely deep in thought in this, and you know, I suspect that Bequiet sort of fancies his chances because he can't see Mitsu's hand, which is probably enough to just limp over the finishing line.
Yep. I mean, I don't even think it's limping at this point. I really struggle to see how Bequiet has a chance, honestly, because he's missed out on 2 turns of hero power here, which is insanely massive.
Interesting there, that he chose to Dark Pact the Void Lord rather than the Taldram, I guess.
That's a good point. Maybe he was expecting Twisting Nether.
Okay. Yeah, because cards are missing from this game.
Exactly.
That you don't know what they are.
You cannot perfectly card track, that's right.
That'd be a good game. Just start with 27 or 30 cards and don't know what was taken out by the developers.
That is what this game is. That's what I'm really
saying.
doing to Hearthstone, yeah.
But you don't even know what's missing from your own deck. Where's my Rin? Oh, it's gone. Okay, so the only way that Bequiet could have won this is if he could somehow have got maybe 2 Void Lords versus 0 to stick and start hitting for 6 a turn. Yeah. That's not going to happen, as you can see. We've known for some time that's likely.
And, you know, like you said, he's got the last laugh at the moment in terms of Void Lords. He kind of has got 2 Void Lords to stick, even though one of them is just a little babby. But, I don't know, I mean, this is the point where you just have to have full-on maths. Like, Mitsuhide has to have the quickest maths here.
Full-on maths? That sounds much harder than quick maths. Significantly harder.
I mean, that's to be both. You have to be accurate and speedy, because what, if he hero powers face here, his opponent is 2 turns behind on fatigue, and he just needs to realize, do I win that? Do I beat that scenario? Is there a way I can board clear? Because he's obviously got a Lord Godfrey at this point, and it looks to me with Godfrey available on the following turn, boom, 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 that would be a board clear, wouldn't it? Because you go that one, and then it damages those Void Walkers and then those Void Walkers. I think that's a clear. And that's just going to be it. Bequiet realizes it's over in an incredibly complex game where there were players switching their game plans multiple times to try and optimize their game plan. Bequiet ends up losing it there. And I would absolutely love to hear the opinion of some of the better Q-Block and Control Warlock players out in the crowd who are here as to were there any fundamental mistakes in each of the players' game plan? Should Bequiet have gone more heavily in on Rin? Should Rin have been played earlier? Should Rin have been played later and it was more pressure being played earlier on? There's so much to consider in scenarios like that.
One thing I feel where if there was a mistake, but it's hard, I can't identify that this was one, but it felt like Bequiet could have set up a situation where he gets both the cubes,
right,
procs one, leaves the other up, and then twisting nether becomes a problem.
Right.
And he didn't manage to set that up. If you set that up to sort of say, here's a cube, so if you're twisting nether, I have 2 giants, here's 2 giants, so if you don't twisting nether, I have 2 giants.
Right. That, I agree, that is the dream.
But I don't know if he could have got there,
that's
right?
The thing.
So I need to watch the game again from around there and see if that's a situation that he could have maybe set up. Because he seemed to get to that point and then realise, oh, it doesn't do it.
I agree.
So I wonder if he miscalculated something around that part.
Yes, it feels to me in that scenario like Mitsuhide, just because he loaded up with small minions on that turn, there was no way to make them out of the way, because there were always too many minions attacking into those cubes.
Paladin, though, this is a deck.
This is a deck, been doing, well, very well represented in this tournament, banned a fair amount, but doing relatively well, I would say, overall. But against a control warlock such as this one from Mitsuhide, you're definitely going to have your work cut out. But at the same time, Bequiet's got a respectable hand to be moving along with here.
It's not, okay, but it's like
it's not good.
The 2 drops.
I agree. You don't want jugglers off just naturally being played. You want them from call to arms. But the Blessing of Kings is the card in this matchup.
Yes, that is fair. So it's not the worst hand available, but it needs to rapidly get better. It did.
That's pretty good.
That's an okay card, I've heard it said.
If you can dodge the owl, which we can see he will not be doing. Mitsuhide does have a copy of Iron Beak Owl all ready to go in hand. This could be incredibly good for Bequiet, but how he plays around both Silence and Spellstones and Siphon Soul and AoE removal, it's such a fine needle to thread. I don't think with the hand he's got he will quite be able to do so, but clearly he's holding back at least a little bit here, not wanting to make himself too vulnerable to Hellfire or Defile.
Yeah, well, this is actually saying go ahead, defile me, see if I care, then if you do it, I will just play the exact same 2 cards onto the board next turn.
And I think what it's also saying is, like, you know, defile me, see if I care, but it's also saying, I'm not going to give you a board that's worth defiling, because if we went Juggler into Hero Power and he was met with Coin Hellfire or Defile, his game plan completely falls apart because he has nothing to Kings.
And the way he's done this means he's going to get that attack in, but... Oh, Doomsayer, you're so annoying.
Oh, man. And
which sets up for the Owl, but the second Blessing could be... Blessing not in too much disguise. Equality in trading to Doomsayer is also there.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider here, but for Mitsuhide, if he had just the upgraded Spellstone or just the Owl, maybe Bequiet could push forward a big minion here. But the thing is, with both Librarians having been played with a Spellstone in hand, it's just too much. Like, 7 damage, you're never going to get a minion with Kings on it to above the 7 damage mark.
So, be a shot fired here. He's hit the Doomsayer because he's was pointing. No, he hasn't. I thought he pointed at it and changed his mind when he thought it was dead.
You thought wrong, Neil.
Makes a change. All right, so Mitsu just ignoring this motley crew. And if I was going to say if Bequiet can pick up Silence, but this is as good as a Silence a lot of the time. Not quite, obviously, but you know, it's up there.
Yeah, it's it's a fair bit worse. I mean, like, the main reason you want Blessing of Kings is it makes being on the coin a lot better, because on turn 3 you can go coin Blessing of Kings, or even if you just play it on turn 4, that's often good enough to start pushing damage. But when it's lining up against Void Lords, it's too much. And I mean, for Mitsuhide here...
10? It's not for long.
He is on 10.
I did get it.
Yeah, you are correct, you are correct.
It just means that the Avenging Wrath stuff is kind of possible. It's not...
Right, and
it's just the damage that one blessing's done. But it is only going to be one blessing that probably sticks.
And so here for Mitsu, he is absolutely, I would expect, going to be clearing the board here, leaving up 3 1/1s going into turn 6, going into Sunkeeper Tarim. Is just too scary. Like, Owl into Defile here is what I'm expecting most heavily. I'm not really seeing plays other than that. I mean, oh no, but you really want to save Owl, don't you?
Yeah.
Like for Valinor.
So yeah, Bequiet's set up a nice start to this game.
That's
There's a long way still to go. There's a Dark Pact in hand for Mitsu. That's one of the cards I was sort of tongue-in-cheek a bit earlier. I said, well, it wouldn't have mattered. The extra 4 health you're going to lose from this card when it's nerfed is massive. Valanir after Owl.
There is that Valanir. Very important to be quiet because he... You know, his early game plan did not work out as well as it could have done because generally you want to be moving towards lethal, as you pointed out, around these turns with Equality Avenging Wrath or Argent Commander, cards like that because they don't have a Void Lord. And even though Mitsuhide does have a Void Lord in play at the moment, the silence going, the ability to cycle through his deck with Loot Hoarder, get himself closer to that Avenging Wrath, and maybe, in addition to that, an Equality to close things out, this is the situation that Bequiet maybe can sneak through a victory in, especially because Mitsuhide cannot pull that second Void Lord out of his deck with the Lackey.
This was an innocuous-looking turn, but it actually was a holding turn. He wants to get something to go with his Valanir. He wants to set up a chance of time. He knows this lot is dying, but this is the last chance he gets to get a juggle that does any damage to face. He wants to cycle his Loot Hoarder to try and get some more options, and he got a cheeky 2 damage out of it.
He did, and I think he realizes here probably correctly, he's never winning this game at the moment without a good Tarim turn, as it currently works out. Like, Lich King... Maybe if he gets some really good options off of it.
It happens occasionally.
It does, yeah, like that's a chance. But realistically, it's going to be the Tarim that's going to be giving him a victory here. Because the thing is, if this board is cleared off by a Defile or a Hellfire, it's bad, but it's not game over. So he gets Call to Arms as the next card.
Especially
like
Hellfire.
That.
I mean, Hellfire is super dangerous right now.
Very true, very true. And Mitsu's going to be afraid of that because he's probably thinking that Blessing of the Lich King or Sunkeeper Tarim is a spellbreaker. Like, he's definitely going to be afraid of that, which is why he's taking so long here, because obviously we can see Defile here and probably just pass, maybe a tap, is fine. Like, you're still in a perfectly healthy spot there.
Although with 2 spellbreakers in there, even if it's not one, you've still got like a 15% chance or whatever to lose to it anyway.
That's true, and that's why he's afraid of it.
And the options are now stacking up for Bequiet, with the good cards coming along.
And he's kind of taking a much more lackluster Tarim in this turn, even though he's now seen, both copies of Defile, a Silence coming down as well. He's just anticipating that his ability to win through a giant Tarim turn is just not here. And now the healing starts to come.
Avenging Wrath of this.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so it's Lich King is probably not going to get better than it is right now.
I agree.
Although the pickup of the Chain Gang, actually the pickup of the Chain Gang means Lich King's even better. Just try and get that Valanir silliness onto your Chain Gang as quickly as possible.
And even that is pretty good. If you could make your opponent burn an early Lord Godfrey, or maybe even push your minions out of range of King Godfrey at all being killed, it can be a very powerful combo indeed, because then you're not vulnerable to Siphon Soul or the Spellstone either.
So many possibilities.
So, not actually easy for Mitsu here. I mean, he's got Spellstones again, but...
But again, these turns are...
easy now.
My goodness. Okay, I was going
Mitsu
to say...
spoiled our Hearthstone game. We're enjoying it.
For Warlock, turns 7 and 8 are always bad. Unless you can get a good Godfrey, it's after Lackey and it's before Void Lords and Gul'dan. So you're never going to have particularly strong turns around now. As long as you can weather the storm in those turns and then follow up with Void Lord and Gul'dan, you pretty much always win those scenarios. And Mitsuhide has kind of done that. He needs to be afraid of the Valanir now, especially because 2 out of the 3 minions in Bequiet's hand are fantastic to have Valanir put on them.
And the other one is Jen.
And the other one is...
As always, it just turns out when you don't want it. Nice.
Nobody wants Jennifer Greymane.
So, all the options are now open up for Mitsu, but his hand is still... I'm surprised this game is still a game, but Valanir has done that to it.
That's what Valanir does to games. Like, what were you saying? Is it like on an HS replay, like the second highest win rate card versus Warlock or something like that?
First.
Like, right, it's
in the mulligan.
It's
this
right
is
up
as a
there.
keep. It's in the top 3 for sure.
Exactly.
I can't remember which one it is if I'm honest, but yeah, it's right up there.
Which seems incredibly surprising to me because you have a lot of taunts in this deck. It's not always connecting through to face. There's always at least one copy of Silence, and I would guess that cards like Blessing of Kings and Tarim would probably be slightly higher up on the list. But at the same time, I can see now why it's up there, because even when you miss miss, in this instance, the Saronite Chain Gang, which was obviously the premier option to have the buff thrown down onto, it's still fine. If you can connect this 8 damage Argent Commander through to the face, that's feeling very good indeed, especially because you're just an Avenging Wrath away from having lethal in the next few turns, probably.
Yeah, it is a shame when you lose those 50-50s, but like you say, the silencers aren't around, so you're going to get it back.
Yeah.
There's another Chain Gang in there somewhere. And options as well for Bequiet. Most of them involve having a minion on the board, but hey, you have a button that does that for you on a repeated basis. But Mitsu's still like, let's not get too excited. He seems to be quite well in control of this at the moment.
Yeah, again, just not playing too fancy. He obviously really wants to get this Void Lord resurrected with the Gul'dan, because this can turn into a value matchup, you know, in the later stages of the game. If the Paladin has got a lot of call to arms, thins their deck of all the bad cards, and gets a lot of the good cards later on, you do need to have the ability to lock down the board and move towards your own lethals as the Warlock. But there is that Avenging Wrath that I was talking about, and all of a sudden, the amount of burst for Bequiet is huge. He's got 12 from hand with Commander into Blessing of Kings.
Yeah, and the Anti-Magic Shell might get something done at some point as well later on. He had a chance to get that set up with the Chain Gang at some point, but there were so many ways to clear it anyway.
And yeah, it is now the easiest Gul'dan of Mitsuhide's life. You've seen the equality board clear. You've had both Void Lords die at this point as well. Very, very easy peasy. He even gets both of them back, as was not necessarily guaranteed. And now, with all this damage on board and a good hero power, he can just move towards killing his opponent very quickly. And I don't really think, for Bequiet, there's any way to pull this back, because without an Equality or a Consecrate or Avenging Wrath in hand, he doesn't even have the draw at the moment to clear off this board.
No, it looks like the champion of the German HCT Tour Stop is not going any further in this one. He'll still be battling out for top 32.
I agree.
Try and pick up those 4 points. That up nicely if you've already won one. But Mitsu and the Dusky Boys just keep on winning stuff.
Looking like a very strong lineup, because even though we've seen from a lot of these players who are bringing the Shaman, the even Shaman in there as well, even though the Priest is being banned, that's still its job done. If your deck is being banned, that means it was a good bring. Probably, usually.
Just checking the Godfrey is okay here. It looks more than okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was good to stop there, because maybe there was the possibility.
Yeah, we both paused and suddenly realized, hang on, this is a really huge anti-magic shell.
And, you know, Mitsuhide really wants to keep these Void Lords intact, because obviously he knows that the minion in hand is very possibly an Argent Commander. Something in there has been buffed. He knows that.
He just did a quick count there.
The victory is
Sure.
Bequiet throwing it down. He realizes there's so many ways to clear the board there, be it through Lord Godfrey or the Twisting Nether, Hellfire, all that nonsense. No real way to pull that back. And Mitsuhide going up now to 5-2, I believe, in score in the Swiss. Once again, there are going to be 9 rounds of Swiss before we enter the top 16 later today. Generally, 7-2 is the score that you need to get through to the top 16. So while we don't know necessarily that Bequiet is out, it's probably, considering, unless he has incredibly good tiebreakers, he's probably out of the running to be the champion.
Yeah, it seems very unlikely. I don't think his tiebreakers are too great. He lost fairly early on as well, I seem to remember. It may even have been the first round. So, probably out of it, but looking for those points. And then there's always the side event at Dreamhack, which...
Very true.
A lot of the players will enter as well, and especially a lot of the people who come here... The ones who know they're not going to win the event, they come to play against the pros, they come for the experience, and then they get to play a side event and do it all again. Those guys can get like 12, 15 matches of Hearthstone under their belts in their first tournament.
It's a lot.
It really helps.
It's good experience for those players who have come part of the French community, their first tournament. But it's good to see the pro players also having another shot as well.
Yeah, so the players on 6 wins going into this round were Yanetsky and Scruffy, Casey, Maverick.
Wow.
Oh, they're on the 6 now. It's been updated. They're all on 6 now. So there's a whole list of them, which I'm not actually going to read. I thought I was reading the list. It updated as I looked at it. But lots and lots of people. Sava has crept up to 6 wins. Wow. We haven't seen anything of him at all in this tournament. And he's somebody I've been plugging for quite a while. So I'm glad to see him sneaking his way into the 6s. So another round coming up in a while. Anyone caught your eye? Okay, we're going to have to take a break, actually, and we'll get back with another match for you from this round in just a moment.